Start a video that way I can edit good and let's go. So yesterday we talked about different things about blood. Today we'll just talk about the extra things as we go through this. I'm going to start off with hemostasis. Hemostasis is a fancy way to say blood clotting. Thank God for hemostasis, because if we didn't have hemostasis, any little scratch, all your blood would come out. So it's clotting to reduce blood loss in response to injury. You can take medicine that prevents clotting. Why would I want to take medicine that prevents clotting?
Because it's too much. It stops the flow entirely.
Okay, but why would I want? What might be happening in my life that I want to prevent clotting? What are you gonna say?
It depends. I mean, you would prevent stroke, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I gotta. Lots of risk for stroke or heart attack, myocardial infarction. We'll talk about that next week. And taking things like Coumadin can really help you out on that. If somebody's having a heart attack, what do? You're in the middle of food line. You see somebody having a heart attack, call 911. There's no AED. They haven't lost consciousness, so there's no point in doing CPR. What can you do? Well, other than call 911. Y'all gonna be good, like citizens, and help out. You're in the middle of food line. Somebody right in front of you grabs their chest, goes down to a knee, and you can tell this is all the signs this person's having a heart attack. You can absolutely positively save their life right there in the middle of food line. If you, here, James, run over to the medicine aisle, grab some aspirin, pop aspirin out, and tell them to chew it up. Chew it up, don't swallow it. Let it get absorbed into your buccal mucosa, get that aspirin flowing through your bloodstream. It acts as an anticoagulant. It can absolutely save their life. And then if they have a heart attack, they'll probably start carrying around nitroglycerin tablets. Does the same thing, just a whole lot more. Okay. But yeah, we want clotting to happen, so normally we don't take those medications or chew up aspirin, because we want clotting to happen if we get cut or things like that. If a patient is on warfarin, Coumadin, you have to be very, very careful, because if they cut, they could bleed out. Funny enough, does anybody know where else you can buy Coumadin at the grocery store that is not on the medicine aisle? Coumadin is a prescription medication, but it's warfarin, and you can also buy it at the grocery store, just not to give to humans. What? It has to do with animals, but not pets. Rat poison. The most common ingredient in rat poison is warfarin, because it actually, the rats eat it up. It thins their blood so much that they bleed out internally. They can't clot up their blood at all, and they bleed out internally, and that's how they die. Pretty rough way to go, I'm sure. All right, so clotting to reduce blood loss. This is what hemostasis is. So just some steps that happen. The very first thing that happens is your blood vessels start to spasm, and what that does is it breaks up the flow of the blood, starts to get it to slow down. Anytime you can get the blood to slow down, the blood hormonally changes and becomes a different consistency. And you can notice this if you ever just have, if you bleed. If you don't touch the blood, what's going to happen to it? If you bleed and just have some blood on the surface of your skin and don't touch it and just let it sit there, what's going to happen to it? It's going to get gooey and hard and clot up. Okay, because blood, when it stops moving, some hormonal changes occur, and you activate these platelets, which is the second step too. The hormonal changes cause the platelets to become sticky and spiky. I know those are really good anatomy words there, but it's a good way to think about them. Platelets are kind of invisible, little macromolecules just kind of floating around in your plasma, but if they slow down, they rearrange how they shape and they pile up on top of each other. And that's the first thing that happens. It plugs up the site of the injury. Then the actual red blood cells and the plasma will change consistency as well. Your blood is transformed from a liquid to a gel. This step 3 if you ever go to take biochemistry or an advanced anatomy class one day down the line, this is where you have a whole 2 or 3 more pages of notes that I am deleting called the clotting cascade, all of the different hormonal changes that that happen to make that clotting pathway happen. And at every step, you can have a certain medicine to affect what's going on. And so one of the most, I mean, and maybe it's just my personal distaste for it, but it seems like to me that was one of the most complicated processes in physiology class, is the clotting cascade. And that's why I leave it out. But yeah, you have these clotting factors to trigger the process to begin. Once everything is taken care of, once everything has healed up, you get clot retraction and repair. Now, I've always found this to be interesting, because if you look at a scab or you look at an injury, it ends up looking kind of stretched out. And the reason that is you have an injury and you lose some skin or you lose some epithelium. The first thing that happens is these proteins are going to grab both sides of the injury and pull it closer together, because it's easier to rebuild a bunch of stuff than it is to start from scratch and build new where you have injury. And so this is what forms scars. This is what forms why you're in, like I said, you have an injury that looks a little bit different, is because you pulled that area and stretched it. And that's why it looks a little strange, a little weird. And the last thing is fibrinolysis. Fibrinolysis is just a fancy way to say chemicals come in and disrupt all of the clots and remove those clots to get them out of the way. So a process that completely allows us to survive and allows us to keep it going and live is the hemostasis. And once again, it's way more complicated than I'm going into, but I hit the big ones there. Questions on that? All right. Next one is transfusion. We're going to watch the movie probably the beginning of next week. I'm going to give you the information of how to do it today. I can't obviously get everybody in, and so how I'm going to do it is I'm going to give you a password to use HBO Max. It is a children's account that you will be linked to, and I will set you up, and you're going to go on HBO Max, use the password I tell you to, and click on Anatomy as your name, and watch the movie called Something the Lord Made. And in this movie, it's a real life story where a physician and his lab assistant are on the cutting edge of heart surgery. They actually solved 2 problems. The first one we talked about last week, I talked about with James a lot, was shock, where you have blood loss. And the second one is tetralogy of Fallot, the blue baby syndrome. And so check out that movie at the beginning of next week. We'll talk about that more probably on Monday. But shock, their first problem, it's a relatively new idea to use transfusion. You know, you go back 200 years and you still had a common medical solution to a problem would be bloodletting. You have a sickness, so I cut you or use leeches and let the blood out of you. I get rid of blood. And so obviously we look back on that and say, wow, that was stupid, and it was. But, you know, it's just this common sense thing now that, well, you're sick or you're injured, let's give you some new blood. And so that's what we do with transfusion here. Now, blood is based on specific antigens. Antigens are anything that your immune system can respond to. So it can be a good thing or a bad thing, but anything your immune system can respond to is antigen. And our most common thing we talk about with blood typing is ABO blood typing. It is Mendelian genetics, but a little bit different because instead of having one dominant trait, you have 2 dominant traits. And so both A and B are dominant and O is recessive. And so if you have someone who is type A, which means their genotype is either A or AO, which means they got an A from their mama, an A from their daddy, or an A from their mama and an O from their daddy. They were going to have type A blood, which means they have that A antigen and produce the B antibody. Type B is going to be BB or BO. There you go. I have the B antigen and the A antibody. Now, if I try to give someone with type B blood, type A blood transfused,
It will attack.
their body is going to try to destroy it. Their body's going to try to destroy it. Their body's going to try to get rid of it. And you'll deal with a really rough problem. Type AB blood is A, just straight up, you got an A from your mama and a B from your daddy. So AB has all the antigens, so they make no antibodies. So what blood can you give a type AB person? Yeah, type AB, but type AB person would be a universal acceptor. You can give them any blood you want to when it comes to types A and B. Then you have type O blood, which is no antigens, which is OO. O from your mama and O from your daddy. They have no antigens, which means they make all the antibodies. But since they have no antigens, you can give them to anybody else. They are a universal donor. That means if you have type O blood and you give blood and they find your type O blood, what are they going to do? They're going to ask you to come back every single chance they can get because they really, really want your blood.
Type O is so rare.
It's not, it is rare, it is rarer, but that's not the reason. The reason is because it's so useful. You know, you come in with an emergency, I can grab a bag of type O blood and I know I don't have to think about it. I can put it in. That sounded wrong. All right, so last thing we have there is the RH factor. A lot of times people say, oh, negative, oh, positive, B negative, B positive. RH factor is the positive and negative, and it really doesn't have anything to do with type A and B. It's just listed at the same time. It's another factor that's either present or absent on red blood cells. I've actually, from my experience, RH factor is a whole lot more important when you're talking about birth, making sure that the mother and daughter are compatible, and making sure that you don't end up with fetal hemoglobin attacking maternal hemoglobin. Speaking of that, you have the last thing up here, which is your developmental aspects. If you got a baby, and all my 4 guys in this room, none of us are going to have to worry about this, but if you ever have a baby in your uterus, who do you want to get the oxygen first? You or the baby? The baby. And so fetal hemoglobin, which is a different chemical construct of hemoglobin, actually prefers, will have greater affinity for oxygen than adult hemoglobin. And so the mother will actually suffocate and run out of oxygen before the baby if you're in a situation with low oxygen. Now, obviously, there's not many situations you be with low oxygen, but it makes sure that you give the baby the oxygen before the mother gets it. And then when you become an adult, the hemoglobin F kind of goes away and gets replaced with normal adult hemoglobin. And that's pretty much blood. Not much else to say about that. We're going to start with the heart next week. We'll watch our movie. I'll give you the information of how to watch the movie as we're going forward. And we'll do some other cardiac things next week. Probably break out some stethoscopes and try them out. If you have if you're at home and you have access to stethoscopes, try to see if you can find one. And we'll probably play some heart sounds digitally as well, since we can't all have a stethoscope. Questions? All right,
Are we going to talk about the triangle of auscultation?
Nah.
Okay.
I don't usually get into that. Sorry, James.
Dang it.
All right, y'all have a great weekend. Behave yourself. James, you going to join me at 3 o'clock?
Yes.
All right, buddy. Take it easy.
You too.